Hey everybody, it's John Wheatcroft here with another one of our Sunday sessions. We're up to week number 26. So that's 6 months of these, would you believe? I hope lockdown's not impacting upon you too dramatically. It's not making too many changes to your life. And if things go to plan, there are some gigs. I've got some gigs in December. So I'm hoping that we're allowed to return to some form of normality, and I can actually get some gigs under my belt for this year. It's been a very, very different year, and I've tried to sort of stay positive by doing things like this, and then also by recording new material. So I'm midway through a second album, and I'm going to play one of the tunes from that for you today. So it's a slightly different approach today because you've heard this tune before, this piece before. This is a song called Butterfly, a waltz 3/4 thing. And when I originally played it, I'd only just written it. So I was just kind of getting stuff together. I wasn't really ready to record it. So I was just using it as a way to woodshed the tune really and just sort of give it an airing in public. Now, from that point to this, I've been doing some practice on this tune. And I'm at the stage where I'm about to record it. I'm going to record it maybe even today. But I thought I'd share something of the process with you. Usually, everything else that I've recorded, with the exception of I did a version of Minor Swing where I played the Grappelli solo as well as Django's, you know, which was obviously worked out. That was obviously something that I worked out and learned. Usually, everything that I've recorded so far has been a combination of improvisation with a little bit of guidance. Meaning, the usual method is, in practice, I'll record lots of different takes, just purely improvising, and then I'll go away from it, listen to them back, and pick the good bits, pick the parts that work well, the bits that I feel working, and then also steer clear of the parts that are not working so well. So then when I actually go to record the improvised, inverted commas, the improvised solo, then there's some ideas I can draw from that I know are going to work. So it's kind of like improvisation with little bits of compositional guidance, for want of a better word. That way, you're not going to sort of clam up or be stuck for ideas. You've at least got something to start from. And even if you don't end up using those ideas, it gives you a position of strength, where something is going to work, which is good, particularly, when we're dealing with things where you might be a little bit nervous or getting a little bit stressed or tense or whatever. Recording can be, fraught with anxiety if you're not careful. But with this particular tune, I thought, why not just to see what comes out, take a completely different approach, and I'm going to compose a solo, so write a solo. So every single note that you're about to hear, that I'm about to play, I already know what I'm going to play. And that's a whole different thing, practicing something and being able to deliver it just as a thing in and of itself. And I find that that's got its own challenges as well, because when you improvise, sometimes you can play something and if you didn't intend it, but you can make it work, that can be where an exciting moment occurs. Whereas when you're playing a piece, as it were, then, there's a yes or no answer. It's, are you playing it well? But then you're also managing to play it so it doesn't sound stiff or stilted or wooden and sort of overly composed, for want of a better word. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play that tune for you. Then I'm going to share some ideas around double stops. I'm going to look at a little bit of spicing up some of your blues playing by interjecting some moments of tension in the 12-bar blues. And I hope you enjoy some interesting stuff today. Thanks once again for checking this out, and I'll see you on the other side of the tune. you enjoyed that piece. I think that's number 7 finished from what's going to be my second solo record. Yeah, and I think I might even record it today. The practice for this, getting this together so that I can play it on this video, is just priceless in terms of the recording, because it's much easier to record audio where you can drop in, and the fact that you can do it sometimes means that you don't need to do it, if you like. Or you can record in sections. You can get like the perfect melody section and then hit save, and knowing you don't need to have to keep going back because you made a mistake in the solo or whatever. And that's liberating, really, because it means that you can kind of get something recorded and saved. And whereas if you keep going over it, sometimes it ends up getting progressively worse. Things can, you hit a peak, I think, of concentration. So I just thought I'd share some thoughts on the sort of the inner dialogue. What kind of things, what am I trying to think about when I'm playing? And the honest answer is as little as possible in terms of verbal commands. The sort of internal self-talk generally ends up being negative, I find. Assuming that I've learned the piece, like if it's a new piece, if it's something that I'm new to, then sure, I might be thinking, okay, here comes the bit in B flat, okay, at this point it's going to go to a major chord, or whatever it might be. Or, don't forget it's the second time bar, things like that. But that's based around, when a piece is new, but then practice is the answer to that. That's the solution for that. But for example, in this instance, all I was thinking about when I was playing today was singing the lines. So not out loud necessarily. I wouldn't really subject anyone to listening to me sing out loud. But it's going on in my mind. I'm imagining it, and I could sing that solo and the melody from beginning to end, and hopefully it matches what I play. If there's a point where I can't sing it, then I don't know it. I don't know it well enough. So by singing stuff internally, what that does is it doesn't leave me any space to have those kind of critical self-doubt, negative self-talk things that they can definitely plague a performance, particularly if you feel like you're under a bit of pressure, like it's being recorded or it's being videoed or what have you. So I find, in a way, the way to get sort of immunity to this kind of stress is to do it a lot. That's one thing, to try and do these things a lot. But secondly, try and replace the potential negative, destructive thoughts with something that's more positive. So just my suggestion to you, so the first thing today, before we get into the playing examples, might be do that by singing along. So singing the parts. And in that instance, you're not thinking about any of the technicalities. I'm not thinking this is a D flat major arpeggio or this is a G minor section or anything like that. I'm just thinking purely in terms of music. So you might find that helpful. It might be something that you want to incorporate into your routine every day. I had a question from Dan relating to incorporating double stops into his playing, how to work some double stop ideas. So this is something I'm going to look at over the next 2 weeks, because there's quite a lot of ways that we can do this. So I'm going to spread this over 2 sessions. So today I'm going to just show you like a basic introduction to developing double stop vocabulary. So real simple stuff, starting off with scales, then we're going to look at some arpeggios, then a little bit of vocabulary coming from a Bireli Lagrene idea, which is quite cool. And then today we'll end by looking at using chords, how you can use chord shapes, the actual chord shapes themselves, as a means of generating some of these ideas. So let's begin by covering some of the fundamentals by looking at scales in double stops. A really good thing to begin developing double stop vocabulary is to play scales using intervals. So you may have seen this book, this Ray Brown bass method book, floating around on my music stand on some of these videos. The first few chapters of that book, first chapter at least, is based around these very topics, taking a scale and breaking it up into thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, and so on. So I suggest that's something that you do, and either do it in position, so meaning like you might take an interval, like say a sixth interval, and we take a scale finger in like so, and we play double stops within that fingering. Or we can do it moving along the length of the guitar neck. So, both of these things are valid. Sometimes it's going to lend itself more to moving along the length of the neck. So, for example, if you're playing seconds, that tends to lend itself to this kind of motion. It's quite dissonant sounding. And things like octaves, because you can lock one shape. It's quite tricky to do octaves in position because you have to keep reframing the finger. But it's a great practice thing. That's just octaves within a C scale, but doing it in such a way that I'm not really moving the hand, as opposed to going, I'm moving along the length of the string. Okay, so let me just run through them quickly. So we've got thirds. That sounds like super useful sound, really, really commonly used. It's the sound of thirds. Okay, fourths are a bit sort of square sounding, but they're really nice because they don't really imply major or minor. So that's fourths. So if I put that through the whole scale, you'd have root fourth. Now we have some questions here. Do you stick to the position finger and skip strings, or do you reposition the notes? And I'd suggest keep your options open. So find a lot of sort of pentatonic-y type things. Fourths with one major third, these are fourths, and because you can stack these up, so they are flipped to pentatonic scale now. Okay, so fifths, they're kind of similar to fourths. In fact, they're inverted. Now again, same issue. Do we skip strings? Or do you move them along the length and kind of encompass more than one finger, and it's your call, completely your call, or do you move them along the length of the guitar? So again, it's useful there to know where does it deviate from the perfect fifth. These are all perfect fifths, F, G, A, B. So from the B note, that's where it deviates. Okay, then sixths, which are kind of inverted thirds. So make certain you're okay with them. Then more dissonant intervals like Schofield-like sevenths. Really nice. And then sort of stacking them one on top of another. So you got. So you can kind of play melodies. So that's using seventh intervals. Okay, and then octaves, as we said. You can take it further down and do ninths. Just sort of dissonant sounding. Because of course they're like seconds, but an octave higher, if that makes sense. So they're similar to seconds. It's like gone. And tenths, which are like thirds. And on it goes, yeah. Okay, so this is just sort of good scale practice. You know, it's not necessarily super creative. It's just a question of getting the scale under your fingers. Start to play lines in double stops, like the way you would go. So I could maybe put a seventh. And then maybe go to tenths. You know, when improvising, say. So, as I said at the start, you know, I'm not claiming these to be original ideas in any way. You know, like I'd say. Instrumentalists have practiced these things for centuries, so you should be the same, I guess. You know, we should be able to play in thirds, in fourths, so on. In fifths, make certain that you've got these things down. Sixths, sevenths, octaves, and so on. Again, I'd explore them in position, and then I'd also explore them moving horizontally along the length of the guitar neck. Things start to get interesting when we start looking at arpeggios. Scales are great, of course, but they tend to imply a family of chords rather than an arpeggio being more specific to one harmonic event, which means then we can change arpeggios to imply chord progressions. So that's a useful thing, particularly for jazz improvisers, to practice these things with arpeggios. So we'll start off just, again, everything coming from C, so C major. So we might do a C triad. Of course, triadic arpeggio could look something like this. But we could, of course, play. Let's do the root and the third together, the third and the fifth and the octave. So you can practice moving these things around, or minor. Get ready? Root and third. So now I could start putting that into chord sequences. C, F and G. So C, G, so C, G, F, or what have you, whatever you want. Okay, now of course you can make the intervals bigger. Instead of going root to the third, I can go root to the fifth. It's kind of like classical sounding ideas. So I'm going from the root to the fifth, the third to the octave, the fifth to the third. So just making the skips just bigger. So that's root, fifth, and I can do that again. Use those kind of things to create line. Was like C and D at the same time. C, D, C, D, or C, E flat, whatever chord progression you want to imply. So that's, and then we go. Of course, we do the same thing in minor. So I suggest just begin to practice these things. Put them through chord sequences. So there I did C minor, and going to, in this case, F minor. And you can use them to create double note things, or to stagger, to create more of a linear type thing. So I'd say do this with triads. Make certain that you've got your triads together and you can play them 2 notes at a time. Now we could extend this to, this is a great, I'll show you this lick based on 7th arpeggios, right? So if I take root, 3, 5, 7, root, 3, 5, 7, and what I'm going to do is play a diatonic third above. You're going to get root and third, 3 and 5, 5 and 7, 7 and 9. And then I take that to the next octave. So that's something I can play. So like, in that case I moved it then to F. So from C, and to F, okay, so this is a way of spelling out the harmony. So if the progression was changing, moving from chord to chord, I can follow it with these double stops. So really slowly, I've got root and third, 3 and 5, then I move that to the 5 and 7, 7 and 9. And then I can stack that in the next octave. Okay, or I can play it with an A string root. I'll go to F now. Root 3, 3, 5, and now I've got an option here. Just playing around with different fingerings for this. Of course, you can make that into a dominant 7 with a 9. And now we have a choice here to, do you go, wait, where do you finger that? It's up to you. See the parallel. Parallel intervals there. Do that in the country. You've got sort of the same notes, same distance, so that means you can use the interval in between. So we run that again. Root 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, 9, root 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, 9. Okay, so that's dominant 7. Then we can do it with minor 7. Okay, so root and 3, minor 3 now. 3 and 5, 5 and 7, 7 and 9, root 3. Now again, you've got choices there. Where do you want to play that? Do you want it to be there, or do you want it to be here? It's up to you. Totally your call. So there we have 2 options. Root 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, 9, root 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, 9. I can do the same thing. So on, yeah. And that's F. So I'm just building up a vocabulary of arpeggio shapes, like the way you would have a vocabulary of single note line arpeggio. Like the same way that you would have. Okay, so there's a great Bireli Lagrene version of this, which is the next thing I'm going to show you. So what I'd like you to do though, just before we get to that, we're going to play this arpeggio. Root, 2nd, 3rd, 5th. Root, 2nd, 3rd, 5th. Root, 2nd, 3rd, 5th. Something that you hear a lot in Django's. It's like a major triad with a 9th. Some players will call that tetrachord. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. And the minor version. So just spend a moment or two just getting familiar with that fingering. I'm going to show you a great Bireli Lagrene lick. Here's a super cool double stop idea that I borrowed from Bireli Lagrene. Okay, so coming from this arpeggio, okay, we begin by playing the root and 3rd together. Then we play the 2 and the 5. We do this whenever we can find those notes. Okay, so that's the first step, the root and the 3rd, the 2 and the 5. Then we play the 3 and the octave. Okay, so that's the first section. Wherever you can find that. Okay, and the 4th part of the puzzle, if you like, there's 4 parts to this idea. Root 3, 2 and 5, 3 and octave, 5 and 9. So, got it? So, root and 3, 2 and 5, 3 3, an octave, 5 and 9. Root 3, 2 octave. Now you have choices here with these fingerings. So really slow. I can play that with an A string root. So if I play, say I move to F now. Root and 3, 2 and 5, 3 an octave, 5 and 9, root and 3, 2 and 5. Making sense? Okay, and they can make these things into minor. So we'll do this in C and in F. So the first one's in C, again I'll play real slow. And you can pick them or hybrid pick them like I'm doing, so you could put them with a flat pick. There you'd have to think about what you want to do. Do you want to mute the string in between? Okay, then I'll give you that in F. So. Okay, then I'm going to give you in C minor. So this time it's coming from this arpeggio. Or F minor. Double stops now. So that's root and 3, 2 and 5, 3 an octave, root and 3, say root and 3, 2 and 5, 3 an octave. So C minor, super slow. Same thing in F minor. Got it? Okay, so there's the 4 fingerings. C major, F major, C minor, F minor. Okay, so that's a Bireli Lagrene double stop idea. Let's wrap up our look at double stops this week by seeing how chord shapes can actually give us some potential ideas. So everything I'm going to play now is going to come from the key of C major once again. And I'm going to start with an A-shape C major 7 chord. Like so. Okay. So that's a great chord. But we can use it to create great potential by breaking it up into 2-note fragments. So whilst that's brilliant as a chord, it can be even better when we start seeing it in small pieces. So imagine instead of playing all 5 strings at the same time, I'm going to play strings 5 and 3. So what I have there is those 2 notes, root 7. Okay, so instead of playing all 5 strings, I'm going to play just these 2 notes. And that's the 5th and the major 3rd of the chord. Or maybe I'll play just these 2 notes. So that gives me kind of like an arpeggio. So what I'm doing here is now filling in some of the gaps. So from the root, and it jumps up to the 5th. Well, I might want to put that 3rd in. So to see that around that chord shape, I've actually got this 7th arpeggio. We're playing in 7th intervals. sound. Okay, so if I put it from the lowest possible note, I get 5th to the 3rd, 7th to the 5th, root to the 7th. Of course, I can play these from different degrees and different chords. So in this instance, I went C, F, I go E minor. And you can do things like, I can imply that against other harmonies. C major could be used against different chords. An F sharp in the bass, or whatever you can do with major 7s, of course. So let's just do a little diatonic exercise to wrap up then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this through the harmonized scale: C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A half diminished, A minor, B half diminished, and so on. So here I'll just keep it within the chords. I won't do those kind of extra bits with this example, but that's something that you could work on. Okay, so C, D minor, E minor, F, G7, A minor, B half diminished, C major. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So of course, if it works with this chord, it's going to work with other chords too. So that could be something that you could explore, is applying this kind of breaking the chord into small fragments, applying that principle to other chord shapes that you know, and using it for either, this kind of in the middle between melodic and harmonic ideas, isn't it? It doesn't quite sound like full chords, but it's not as linear as just single notes. So with this in mind, it's perfectly suited to when you play with a clean guitar sound. So it's going to work great in jazz styles, on acoustic, it's going to work great in country and things like that as well. So yeah, good luck with this, and we'll pick up the ball next week and we'll continue with a little bit more double stop action. Jacob sent me a question relating to Josh Smith, talking about how Josh Smith outlines blues changes. One of the things I've been doing for Guitar Techniques this week is writing an article that explores the similarities between the phrasing of a lot of modern blues players and a lot of early jazz guys. So you'll hear in Josh's playing the influence of guys like Charlie Christian. So what I wanted to touch upon, and I'm going to look at this in greater depth next week, is some of the ways that you can jazz up the blues. Okay, so I'm going to show you now an Oscar Moore lick. Oscar Moore was a great guitar player. He played with the Nat King Cole Trio. And really, really beautiful player. Sounded like similar in some regards to Charlie Christian. Had a great feel for playing through the changes, but also could swing like crazy, and definitely understood the blues. So we're in the key of B flat, and it's going to go E flat, that's the changes we're going to play over. Okay, so the lick goes like as follows. Okay, so I'm hoping that in that phrase there you can hear the harmony. So what he's doing is in bar 1 he's playing B flat, that's a B flat 7, but what he does is he puts the flat 9 in bar 1, so he's implying a sense of tension that goes to the 3rd of the 4 chord, of the E flat chord. So slowly it goes 1, and what we're doing here, we're going to go to this from the note a semitone below. So that's an arpeggio of the E flat chord. So you can hopefully hear home to the 4 chord. So this is the kind of thing that Josh Smith talks about, is connecting together the notes that you find in one chord to the notes that you find in the next chord. And the real kind of important ones are hitting things like the root, the 3rd, and the 7th. Okay, so in this instance, he's aiming for that. So then we're going back to our B flat 7, and then he plays a phrase, it's like a 2-5-1. That's, in this instance, it's an F minor 9. Then we come down a B flat with a sharp 5 this time. And then back to our E flat. So in total we've got B flat, again, this is kind of similar to what we looked at a moment ago, using the chord shapes as a means of generating lines. So there, we could see this as being. So, a really, really good thing to practice is to be able to play the root, 3rd and 7th. So there what I'm doing is I'm applying the chords by just playing the root, 3 and 7. So just a blues, not with the jazzy chords. Now, the points where we can begin to introduce tension are where we go between when the chords function as the dominant of the next chord. So, for example, if I play quick change blues where it goes B flat to E flat, like so, that B flat chord is actually the 5 of E flat. So what I can do, and this is what Oscar Moore does with his, he actually goes and then makes it, so if he's going flat 9, even in bar 1, straight out the gate, 3, 4, 1. So he's introducing tension at 2 points in the first 4 bars, and these are areas that you should explore, and this is something we're going to look at in greater depth next week. So the areas are when it goes from the B flat chord to the E flat chord in bar 2. So just before that change, we can begin to put tension on this B flat chord. We could make it B flat altered even. Go to E flat. And we go back to B flat. And then it happens again in bar 4. And that's where we could either just play B flat altered or 7 flat 9 or any of those kind of scales that you can use to create tension. Or we can introduce a 2, 5, 1, and that's what this Oscar Moore lick does. Here comes 5, and then we're on the 4 chord. So what you play there effectively is like going 1, 1 altered, 4, 1, 2, 5, 1. Okay, so that's in the first 4 bars. You have this potential for dissonance. You could go. That's that's making sense. Now, this can also happen in the lines if it's not happening in the rhythm section. In fact, arguably it sounds hipper if it's not actually happening in the chords. You know, if you're just playing over the bass players, you're playing, or so the rhythm player's just implying this. And you imply these lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I did there, I put a minor 2/5 in this instance, you know, which is also cool. Or you can play major. Whatever kind of stuff you've got going on, you know, in a 2/5/1, there's a load of things that you can play there. So this is something we're going to look at in greater depth, but for now, our lick. I think I played this bit different every time. Doesn't really matter, really. Okay, do whatever, you know, you can make these things your own. The thing with licks, of course, is after you've played them for a little while, you start to transform them. You begin to make them personal to you, which is a good thing. You know, I kind of welcome that. If I've learned something from someone else, I'm looking forward to the time when I've kind of forgotten what they played, and it becomes just something that becomes part of your own language. It becomes your own. Thanks for checking this out this week. I really appreciate the kind comments and the shares and the suggestions for topics to look at in future weeks. I'm going to revisit this idea of sophisticated blues playing, following changes and so on. It seems to be a really popular one. I guess because it's really applicable. It's something that you know, we can apply to pretty much every playing style. There's always a bit of blues in there somewhere, isn't there? It doesn't matter what it is. There's always some blues in there. So yeah, that's something I'm going to revisit over the next couple of weeks. So I hope that you found something useful, maybe inspiring, or maybe just a different take on stuff that you're already familiar with. Please feel free to make any suggestions, whether that be pieces you want to hear or whether it to be particular topics you'd like me to look at. Yeah, stay safe. I hope the lockdown, as I say, is not impacting too drastically on your lifestyle, and you're managing to get some things done. And I will see you next week. Take care of yourself. Cheers for this.